Well, if the vibes weren't off around the Sacramento Kings before, they sure are now after a really, really tough loss at the hands of a shorthanded Philadelphia 76ers team. We'll talk the latest about the De'Aaron Fox trade drama plus everything that went wrong in this Kings game against the 76ers right here on Locked On Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily Sacramento Kings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, it is that time for another episode of Locked On Kings.
Hello and welcome into Locked On Kings, your podcast hub for Sacramento Kings coverage all season long. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off of your first purchase. My name is Matt George. I have the privilege of being your host here. I'm a Sacramento sports anchor and reporter for ABC 10 News. And the Sacramento Kings tonight looked like how I think a lot of Sacramento Kings fans feel at this point. Just emotionally lethargic, right? Drained. These last 36 hours have been exhausting. And I'm not talking about physically exhausting, right? Maybe my thumb hurts a little bit from refreshing my phone so much or from texting, or my ear hurts from the phone being up against my ear so much, having all the conversations that I've been trying to have. But emotionally, with everything that has been going on, right, it's been tiring for us. And even if the Sacramento Kings like to use that team cliche of we keep everything in-house, right? Within this locker room, it's like our bunker. We keep everything in here. We tune out all the noise and we stay together as brothers. Yeah, that might be nice and fun to say. But what's been going on over the last 36 hours has been nothing short of a vortex or a tornado of rumors and opinions and blame, all swirling around this Kings team and one player in particular in De'Aaron Fox, but this Kings team right outside the window of that Kings locker room bunker, right outside the door. And even the tightest and thickest of walls can't necessarily keep out all of the noise that has been happening around this team and around this organization right now. And in one sense, I would say it's probably a good thing that they're on the road during this rather than in Sacramento, where the noise would probably be even more amplified. But with how significant these trade rumors and conversations are, centered around not just the star of the team in De'Aaron Fox, but centered around the biggest star that is now available at this trade deadline. And I put Fox above Jimmy Butler. I put Fox above Bradley Beal because of his age, his contract situation, and his circumstances. Not that Fox is necessarily a way better player than both of those guys are. I personally would much rather have De'Aaron Fox on my team than either of those two any day, even if their contracts weren't a part of the conversation, but that's just me. It's a lot that is going on, and it's tough for anybody to ignore. It's tough for the hardest of diehard fans to deal with and hear, because in reality, it feels like the realization has set in that this version of the Sacramento Kings, this team as constructed, has failed. It's not over. It's not doom and gloom. It's both De'Aaron Fox's relationship here in Sacramento and this team's ability to still make a run and make the playoffs this year and have a good season. They're not past the point of no return. They can be salvaged. But these conversations are a opening of a door, opening of a window to a reality that so many of us not just didn't want to face, but weren't even close to expecting to have to face this season. If I were to have told you a handful of months ago, if I were to have told you late September that Mike Brown would be fired 30 or so games into the season, and De'Aaron Fox would be heavily involved in serious trade rumors and trade drama a week before the trade deadline, I'd have shell-shocked everybody. I wouldn't have believed it myself. And yet, here we are. The way the Sacramento Kings played in this game, it looked like everything that's been happening weighed on them a little bit. And, of course, Doug Christie was asked about this after the game, and Doug said that it wasn't a factor. Everything that's going on wasn't a factor, that spirits were high this morning at shoot-around and in the locker room before the game. But, so, I mean, I suppose it could be a coincidence. It could be a coincidence that this was just a really bad, but unfortunately all too familiar loss in the midst of all of this nonsense and all this craziness going on behind the scenes or outside of the locker room. But that feels like wishful thinking. That feels a little disingenuous, right? I think these players are human, and it's human nature to be impacted and affected somehow, some way by everything that's going on. And I'm not saying by any means, because I don't believe this at all, that there's any kind of negative relationship forming between De'Aaron Fox and any of his teammates. I know those guys have his back, just like he has theirs. Fox has always been a good teammate to them, just like they are to him. They understand it's a business, and they are going to support him through this regardless of what happens. And again, De'Aaron Fox has not demanded a trade. So I'm not worried at all about any kind of cancer or anything in the locker room that's going to drive a wedge between these players. That's not what's happening here. But the last 36 hours and everything going on has been exhausting for everybody. And it looked like it impacted the way that the Sacramento Kings played. Their defensive effort in this game was just bad. It was just bad. Allowing 52% shooting from the field, 41% three-point range to a team that is missing both Joel Embiid and Paul George. Now, I know Tyrese Maxey is the truth, and Tyrese Maxey is a fantastic basketball player, but this Sixers team was big-time shorthanded, and they still carved you up offensively. Defensively, you didn't look good. You have allowed 52 points in the paint. You allowed 17 second chance points. Now, those numbers were actually good on the Sacramento Kings side. Offensively, in those areas, they did well enough, but defensively, the effort, the hustle, a couple episodes ago, I talked about after the Kings lost to the Denver Nuggets to open up this road trip. I talked about the heart that the Sacramento Kings showed. I was proud of that effort. Even though the Kings went down by 25 points going into the fourth quarter, they fought, they battled, they scratched and clawed and walked off that floor. I felt proud of themselves, making a game of it and not quitting. I didn't see that effort for more than a minute or two at times tonight in Philadelphia against the 76ers. And on top of that, the Sixers bench dominated the Kings bench 40-15. And again, the Sixers bench is shorthanded themselves because two bench players have elevated themselves into starting roles with two top starters out. And still, the rest of the bench dominated you, which speaks to something that we'll talk about a little bit later, which speaks to a continued problem with this Sacramento Kings team. Depth has been and continues to be an issue. The Kings did have a couple of really good stretches in this game. The way they started the second half, the start to that third quarter was fantastic, especially from Keegan Murray. Keegan Murray had, 5 or 6 dunks tonight? Keegan Murray, I thought, was fantastic. Malik Monk had an amazing start to this game with 12 points in the first quarter. So there were good stretches and good individual performances. Kings get off to a good start in this third quarter. Midway through the third quarter, they take their largest lead of the game. They're up by 12 points. 80-68 with 6 minutes and 18 seconds remaining in the third quarter. Just over 12 minutes of game time later. So from the 6:18 mark to like the 5:50 or so mark of the fourth quarter, the Sacramento Kings allowed a 36-14 run and suddenly trailed by double digits. They completely fell apart. Offensively, they went cold, which has been a consistent issue with this team this season. And defensively, they didn't put up the fight. They didn't look like they had the fight in them. And the 76ers smelled blood and attacked them. Let's talk about De'Aaron Fox's game first, then we'll talk about the trade talk in the next segment. De'Aaron Fox critics, and I've been reading a lot of those comments. A lot of you commenters here on Locked On Kings. I'm not saying you're wrong necessarily, but I'm pointing out a lot of you have said that De'Aaron Fox is shooting the basketball too much. He's hurting the team by shooting the basketball too much. He needs to not be taking this many shots, especially when he's dealing with the hand injuries that he's dealing with right now. Well, De'Aaron Fox shot the ball less tonight. He shot the ball only 15 total times. He had 19 points on 7 of 15 shooting, 8 rebounds, 5 assists, a couple of turnovers. So the volume for Fox was down. And so was the overall Kings offense. Now, I'm not saying that had Fox taken 20 shots in this game, that everything would have been better for the Sacramento Kings. But if you are going to call for Fox to have a lower volume of shots, but still expect him to be the leading scorer and score at the highest level and be the best offensive piece on this Sacramento Kings team, what you're essentially saying is, I want a lower volume, but a higher percentage. You have to shoot 60+% a night. That's a lot to ask anybody, even your star. So I'm not trying to make excuses for De'Aaron Fox. I'm just talking about, like, if we're calling for Fox to shoot less, this is a result of that. He wasn't. Now, I will say this too, and I want to, and full clarity, because I'm not just trying to mindlessly defend De'Aaron Fox here. There were many times where I watched this game and I thought De'Aaron Fox was going through the motions. I thought De'Aaron Fox was, like I said, kind of emotionally lethargic. If I were to ask myself, did De'Aaron Fox look like he was 100% dialed into this game, locked in and in attack mode? No. The answer is no. But I could also give that same answer to the same question about almost everybody, if not everybody, on this roster that played tonight. So we can't just single out De'Aaron Fox. I do want to talk about Domantas Sabonis. If there's such thing as a disappointing triple-double, Domantas Sabonis had it tonight. 13 points, 14 rebounds, 11 assists, his 8th triple-double of the season. That's all fine and great. Domantas Sabonis took 6 shots in this game. Only 2 of them in the second half. That's inexcusable. Now, my first layer of blame, or like the first person I point to, is Sabonis. Like, dude, get more shots up. You have to get more shots. You can't be playing that passive, especially on a night like tonight where Sacramento's offense was struggling. This wasn't a night where everybody else was rolling and the Kings were scoring 130 points to where Sabonis didn't have to score. That wasn't tonight. Sabonis just flat out was not looking to score. But also, I do point blame at Doug Christie and the coaching staff, and I point blame at his teammates, Sabonis' teammates as well. Y'all got to get him the ball. I know Sabonis isn't your number one offensive option. There's been times where he's had to be. Tonight was a night where I think the Sacramento Kings needed to be maybe not number one in terms of shots taken or your number one offensive option, but sure as hell better than the amount of shots that he took. I mean, just looking at the box score, Domantas Sabonis took fewer shots than all 4 of the other starters by a drastic margin. The next closest to him was both Keegan Murray and De'Aaron Fox, both with 15 shots. He took only 1 more shot than Kevin Huerter, who played less than 10 minutes in this game, or barely under 10 minutes, and Domantas Sabonis played 40. He took fewer shots than Keon Ellis, and just 3 more shots than Trey Lyles off the bench. That's inexcusable. This is not the level of attack from Domantas Sabonis, who typically brings it every single night, that we would expect. And again, that's why I don't just chalk this up to this is a coincidence. I looked at that as he, like everybody, was emotionally exhausted and lethargic because of everything that's been going on. All right, we'll dive into the latest with the De'Aaron Fox trade talks, trade rumors, and everything in between coming up in just a second. This episode of the Locked On Kings podcast is brought to you by TurboTax. Now, this is a message from Intuit TurboTax. Taxes was waiting and wondering and worrying if you were going to get any money back, and then waiting, wondering, and worrying some more. Now Taxes is matching with a TurboTax expert who can do your taxes as soon as today. An expert who gives your taxes their undivided attention as they work on your return while you get real-time updates on their progress so you can focus on your day. An expert who will find you every deduction possible and file every form, every investment, everything with 100% accuracy. All so you can get the most money back guaranteed. No waiting, no wondering, no worries. Now this is taxes. Get an expert now on TurboTax.com. Only available with TurboTax Live Full Service. Real-time updates only in iOS mobile app. See guaranteed details at TurboTax.com/guarantees. So now for the latest on the De'Aaron Fox trade drama. Chris Biederman from the Sacramento Bee, phenomenal reporter, great friend of this show. He is in Philadelphia right now covering the team. He, from what I understand, outside of like the Kings broadcast team, is the only Sacramento media out there. So he spent some time speaking with De'Aaron Fox today after everything that went down. He released an article. I highly encourage you to go and read that article for yourselves. I'm not going to spoil too much because I want you to read that article and get that information from the source. But some important notes from this article that Chris got today. Number one, De'Aaron Fox confirmed or said that he has never requested a trade. He has not asked the Sacramento Kings to trade him. That is words from Fox's own mouth. However, there are some things that De'Aaron Fox didn't deny. And one of the main ones was that the San Antonio Spurs were his ideal destination, the team that he wanted to be traded to. Essentially, if it doesn't work out here in Sacramento, Fox wants to go to San Antonio. We've learned really over the last, let's say 12 or so hours, maybe more than that, probably more than that, let's say 20 hours, that essentially Rich Paul and Clutch have reportedly told the Sacramento Kings, if you are going to trade my client, it's in your best interest and it's in everybody's best interest to do that as soon as possible. Here is the reason why from Clutch's perspective, right? It all has to do with money. First and foremost, the Sacramento Kings are the only team that can give Fox the Supermax contract. That's 5 years, $345 million. Now, he is not eligible for this as of now. In order to earn that contract, either this season, which is not going to happen, or next season in Sacramento, De'Aaron Fox would have to be an All-NBA player. So essentially, De'Aaron Fox would have to ride it out all the way through next season to the end of his deal to see if he qualifies to sign a Supermax contract. If the Kings trade De'Aaron, no matter where he goes, no matter what the circumstance is, if De'Aaron Fox leaves Sacramento in any capacity, his possibility of a Supermax contract is gone. And like I said a couple episodes ago, Fox is not dumb. I think he's aware of circumstances here. I think he's aware he's not going to be an All-NBA player this year. And he's probably aware that he's not going to be an All-Star either. Not that the All-Star matters for the Supermax contract, but if you can't be an All-Star, your likelihood of being an All-NBA player is very low. I know Domantas Sabonis did that last year, but that was pretty fluky, right? It's not going to happen for De'Aaron. So I think it's fair to say that Fox has kind of punted on the idea of being a Supermax player. At this point, it's like, for him, it's about the most money he can get outside of that and the best opportunity that he can go to or stay in that helps him win games. And it makes complete sense, if you're Fox, to think that pairing up with Victor Wembanyama in San Antonio, an organization that historically is very well run, it makes sense that that could be a more ideal landing spot for Fox. So if Fox is traded, 6 months after being traded to whatever team he's traded to, he will be eligible to sign a max contract extension with that team. Now, it's pretty well known that a lot of teams are not going to want to trade for De'Aaron Fox, or not going to want to give up the haul that it's going to take to get De'Aaron Fox without having assurance or belief that they will be able to sign him to that max extension. But you have to understand, the max extension, that's 5 years, $296 million, it is in the best interest of Fox and Clutch to get that as soon as possible, now that Supermax is off the table. Which means the earlier the Kings trade Fox, meaning if they trade him at this trade deadline or in the next week, instead of waiting until the summer to do it, that means it's the sooner that they can sign that max extension. So let's say that the Kings trade De'Aaron Fox at this trade deadline. 6 months from now, what is that? August time. Before next season begins, De'Aaron Fox will be able to sign the max contract extension with the Spurs or whoever it is. He'll be able to get it done going into the year. If the Kings don't trade him until this summer, let's say they trade him on draft night, which is in June. We're talking a couple months into the season. Next season would be the earliest that De'Aaron Fox can sign the extension, and that comes with the risk of what happens if it's not working out, what happens, God forbid, if De'Aaron Fox gets hurt, the team gets cold feet. So it's in the best interest for Fox's camp to get traded sooner, to sign that extension sooner. Doesn't mean it necessarily has to be in the best interest of the Sacramento Kings. And if Fox does not sign a max extension wherever he goes, he gets traded to a team that he says, I'm not going to re-sign here, or claims he won't, and decides to just go to the team of his choice in free agency in summer of 2026. Well, now the max contract he can sign is a 4-year, $219 million deal. We'll get into this more when talking specifically about a San Antonio Spurs trade in just a second. But I want to preface this really quick, or make this abundantly clear. The Sacramento Kings need to do what's best for them. And I laid out yesterday the Sacramento Kings 100% need to get this right. The organization and the future of this organization cannot afford, or will pay dearly if they get this wrong. If they get the wrong players, or don't do enough with the picks that they get, or whatever. If they do not get this move right and move on from De'Aaron Fox the correct way, it will have lasting negative implications on this organization. I feel certain about that. The Sacramento Kings need to do what is best for them, but they cannot play innocent in it. This entire situation is not completely their fault. And in reality, the Kings, what sparked this entire thing was, from what we understand, the Kings having a conversation with a team who called them about Fox, a Fox trade. The Kings informed Fox's camp, because the last thing they want is for the camp to get wind of these conversations happening and the Kings are looking like they're not telling them, or trying to pull a fast one, or trying to sneak it by them, because that would be even worse. But the Kings had a conversation. The Kings told Rich Paul and Clutch Sports about it, and here we are in this entire mess. This is a situation, not specifically with telling Rich Paul, but this is a position that this Kings organization has put themselves in because of their history, whether it's their short-term history with this front office specifically, or their long-term of ineptitude over the last nearly 2 decades. This is what the Sacramento Kings have made, right? Unfortunately, they did not do enough over the last couple of years to avoid this situation outright. And now they've made their bed, now they have to lay in it, right? If you have to be the bad guy, if the Kings have to be the bad guy by trading the franchise player to a place that he doesn't want to be, or just making a deal happen, even if it's going to be received negatively by people like myself or by fans or whatever, if you have to be the bad guy to do what's best for the organization, do it. Just do it. And don't pretend that you don't want to do it, or don't pretend that it's so awful. I would respect it more if you just did it because it's like, if you're cutthroat, this is what we have to do. This is the circumstance. It sucks. This is our best way forward, and this is what we think to do. Here is what I would advise ownership. If I had Vivek's ear at all, and I was one of his advisors, I would advise Vivek. In my opinion at this time, I think this is the best course of action for the Sacramento Kings. Hold on to De'Aaron Fox through this trade deadline. Hold on to De'Aaron Fox through the remainder of this season. When you get to this summer, fire this current version of your front office. Fire Monty McNair and Wes Wilcox. Clean house. Gotta go. It's done. Because the confidence that I have, and I think the confidence that the Sacramento Kings ownership should have in this front office's ability to get this right now, given the circumstances and the power dynamic and the fact that we don't know who's actually making the freaking call to begin with, Wes Wilcox or Monty McNair. Regardless, If it's like an approval rating of a president, the approval rating, the confidence, it's not high right now. It's very low based off of everything that's happened with Mike Brown, the lack of moves being made over the last 2 trade deadlines, the lack of building upon what the Sacramento Kings did well in Beam Team 1 year when they made it to the playoffs, all of it. My confidence level in this front office to get this right is extremely low. And I don't trust them to try and make this move out of desperation to save their jobs. It fails, and now Fox is gone, the Kings are in a bad spot, and their front office is out of a job. To me, keep Fox through this trade deadline. Keep him through the rest of the season. At the end of the season, fire your front office. Bring in a new front office of basketball decision makers that you trust to make this decision. Go through the whole process. Maybe don't hire a guy that you didn't pick for the job as the guy that you did pick's assistant. Start there. And then let them make the decision. That opens up the door to maybe the rest of the season works out. And you could potentially, possibly, maybe tiny smidgen chance of salvage things with Fox, or you bring in this new front office group, and they go, okay, this is what we feel is the best path for getting the best that we can get for De'Aaron Fox at this point in time. You start fresh. That's what I think needs to happen. When things are this messy, you need a deep clean. And I said this when Mike Brown was fired, and I'll say it again. I think a full reset is what's in store and what is necessary for this organization at this point in time. So if I were advising Vivek, I would say hold on to Fox through the rest of the season, hire a new front office this summer, and entrust them to make the right decision with De'Aaron Fox this summer. That is what I would say to do. I'm going to talk about the specifics of a San Antonio Spurs deal, where all that money that I laid out for you with a max contract extension or a max free agency contract and all that, where that comes into play when talking about San Antonio. Plus, I want to talk about Malik Monk a little bit. That's all still to come here on Locked On Kings. Like I said at the top of the show, today's episode of the Locked On Kings podcast is brought to you by Game Time. If you're like me and love live events, whether it's a sporting event, a comedy show, a theatrical production when it comes through on tour, or maybe you're in New York City and want to go see a show on Broadway, if you're into concerts, mega awesome stadium concerts for all those massive acts like Taylor Swift or Coldplay, some of the concerts that come through the Golden One Center, or some of your smaller concerts at your smaller local venues, Game Time has the tickets for all of these events that you are looking for, and they have the best prices and the best features, like their Game Time Picks feature. It makes getting tickets even easier. It filters out all the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. If you're even looking for Super Bowl tickets right now, they're going to be expensive, but I promise you're going to find the best deals and best bang for your buck for even the Super Bowl on Game Time. They have super deals that are unbelievably impressive, including best value for the certain event that you're going to. The app has amazing features like their seat view feature is as accurate as it gets. Plus, they have their all-in pricing feature, which shows you exactly what you're going to be paying when you select your seats. No secret and surprise fees and everything that hits you hard on that final window at checkout. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off of your first purchase. Terms apply. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. So now let's talk about specifically a San Antonio Spurs deal, because this is where De'Aaron Fox wants to go. I think the Kings owe it to De'Aaron Fox to explore that. They don't owe it to De'Aaron Fox to 100% trade him there. And again, if you have to be the bad guy, do what's best for you. If you can get a better deal elsewhere, even if it's somewhere that Fox is not happy to go to or says he's not going to re-sign at, but that team's willing to take the risk to potentially convince him to re-sign or sign an extension or whatever, hey, if you can get a better deal, that is the route that you should go. But when we're talking about specifically a San Antonio Spurs deal, in my opinion, this to me is probably like the best case scenario that you're going to be able to get in a trade package from the Spurs. And I'm telling you, I would take this deal. I would reluctantly take this deal, just like I'm going to reluctantly take pretty much any deal that's not a complete fantasy, because I'm reluctant to see Fox leave and see the fallout from Fox leaving. But this is, to me, probably the best case scenario of a package that the Kings could get from the Spurs. Devin Vassell, Stephen Castle, the 2025 and 2027 Atlanta Hawks picks that are unprotected. That 2025 pick could give you a chance at the number 1 overall pick this upcoming summer. And the Kings get their 2031 pick swap back from the Spurs. It doesn't mean that they now get to pick the best of the Spurs. If the Spurs pick is better, they get that one. Just take the swap off the table. The Kings keep their pick, the Spurs keep their pick. To me, that is the best case scenario of what you can get. I put this out on social media, and to the surprise of absolutely no one, Spurs fans that are responding don't like it and are saying that it's too much. If you're a San Antonio Spurs fan listening right now, understand me very clearly, because I get overvaluing your talent. I do it with Keegan Murray. I do it with a lot of guys here in Sacramento, especially young guys that you're excited about. But understand very clearly, you are trading for a star. You are trading for the exact piece or a piece like this that you've been waiting for, accumulating assets for, to pair with Victor Wembanyama. You haven't been looking for a forward to do it. You've been looking for a point guard specifically to pair with Wemby. Now that point guard is available. I do not expect the Sacramento Kings to get a haul of picks or anything to the value of the New York Knicks trading 5 first-rounders to the Brooklyn Nets for Mikal Bridges this past offseason. I'm not even going that far. But the Kings do not have to give a discount to you or any team just because they're from Sacramento. And it's crazy to me the amount of conversations that happen around pieces that the Sacramento Kings have in any kind of trade, and the Kings are immediately naturally lowballed. And it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. And this concept of leverage, right? Leverage is subjective. The idea that Fox's desired location is leverage in favor of San Antonio and against the Sacramento Kings, I think is not 100% accurate. I think that leverage hurts the Kings in conversations with the Houston Rockets or Miami Heat or these other teams that could be interested in trading for Fox, but are concerned to give up the max or give up the most to get him because they don't know if he's going to re-sign. It's the reason why the Sacramento Kings didn't trade for Pascal Siakam last season, because they didn't have the confidence and the assurance that Pascal Siakam would stick around. So that there's leverage in that sense that could hurt the Sacramento Kings. But I don't think the leverage of Fox only wanting to go to San Antonio hurts the Kings in a San Antonio Spurs Sacramento Kings trade conversation. Again, Fox is the star guard that they've been waiting to become available to pair with Wemby. He's there. It's what you're waiting for. And this is where the money comes back into play. If the Spurs go, well, we can just wait him out and sign him in free agency in a year and a half. What if the Kings don't want to take these picks? Because for some reason, I guess the idea of the Spurs trading Stephon Castle in a De'Aaron Fox trade is so out of this world and so unbelievable to Spurs fans, and it doesn't make any. I understand he's an exciting young prospect. The Spurs are a bad basketball team in the West. They're better than maybe people expected them to be. They're still not a good team. They're trying to improve with their star. Hell yeah, you make your young point guard who's averaging 11 points per game available. For De'Aaron Fox? You kidding me? Stephen Castle being a if Stephen Castle going to the Sacramento Kings in a De'Aaron Fox trade is a deal breaker for you, congratulations, De'Aaron Fox is not going to be on your team. That's it. And if you want to go, well, then the Spurs will just wait for De'Aaron Fox to sign with them as a free agent in summer of 2026. We'll just wait the Kings out. Think about it from Fox's perspective. The difference between Fox signing a max extension with a team and signing with any team of his choosing in free agency is nearly $5 million a year and an extra 1 year of security. The most Fox can get in a free agency deal is a 4-year, $219 million deal versus signing an extension with a team, 5 years, $296 million. It's 1 year of security because by the end of that contract, Fox will be in his early 30s, 31, 32 years old. So it's 1 year of extra security, number one. Number two is it's the difference in total of $77 million. And number three, it's a difference of roughly $5 million per year of the contract. So fine, you want to wait De'Aaron Fox out and think, oh, he'll just choose to come to San Antonio a year and a half from now, because if he wants to come to the Spurs now, then he'll surely want to just come to the Spurs in a year and a half. You can take that risk if you want to, but understand that it is in the best interest of Fox and his camp to get an extension done. And that might be with the Sacramento Kings, or that could be with another team that the Kings decide to trade him to, because maybe Houston comes through with a good offer, or somebody else comes through with a good offer. And maybe Fox goes over there and says, you know what? It turns out that extra year and that extra $5 million per year and that extra $77 million total, maybe that will change my mind and have me stay here versus going to the team of my choice for less money. Especially if the team he's traded to has the potential to be a really good team, like the Houston Rockets, for example. So if you want to wait it out, hey, be my guest. Just don't have the same. You have a star right now that's telling you he wants to play for you. He wants to pair with your star. He is open to that idea more than anything other than staying in Sacramento, and maybe even more than staying in Sacramento at this point. That's what he's saying right now. You really want to play the waiting game with that? You want to risk that that's not going to change in a year and a half? Again, be my guest. But if that's the risk, if holding on to Stephen Castle is worth taking that risk with a star like De'Aaron Fox, hey, hope you can sleep well at night. That's all I'll say with that. Regardless of if a De'Aaron Fox trade gets done, I think another trade has to get done, period, too. Even if the Kings get multiple pieces in a trade that help their depth, like a John Collins or Cam Johnson deal, I still feel like the Sacramento Kings have to make this deal or one of these deals in the next week. Because if you're serious, truly serious about making a run for the playoffs this season, if Fox sticks around, you need to get one of those two guys, or you need to get something, because you're really going to piss him off and piss everybody off if you don't do anything at the trade deadline and just roll this version of this Kings team out through the remainder of this season. That's not going to be great. But if you do trade De'Aaron Fox, even if you get Castle and Vassell in return, you still have to make up for Fox's absence and put that team, now minus their star, in the best position possible to still make a run. James Ham kind of let the cat out of the bag a little bit, and he shared on the Kings Beat podcast a lot of what I had heard and some other people had heard, that there was a deal done or agreed to between the Sacramento Kings and another team not too long ago, like a week ago, to the point where apparently agents and players were informed that this deal was basically done and agreed to. Here we are a week later. Where's that trade? Has it fallen apart? What is it with this front office and their inability to ultimately close down a deal? How many times have we heard, whether it was the Pascal Siakam sweepstakes or over the last couple of trade deadlines, we're involved in this conversation, we're involved in that conversation, but it never gets across the freaking finish line. This is just another reason why I don't have the faith and the belief in this front office to make the right decision with De'Aaron Fox. A big question with the Sacramento Kings, too, with how they're going to look post De'Aaron Fox and how successful that they can be. Like, I'm naturally skeptical that the Kings will be able to succeed and will be a good team short term after trading De'Aaron Fox. Maybe it works out long term, but short term, the rest of the season, I have my doubts that the Kings will be able to make it to the playoffs and make it out of this playoff race. It's not impossible, but I have my doubts after trading your best player. And I think it ultimately relies less on the pieces that the Kings get, the players that the Kings get in the trade, although that's, of course, important. And it relies heaviest on the shoulders of the main guys who are still going to be here. Domantas Sabonis, for example, but especially Malik Monk. I watched Malik Monk very closely in this game, and I'm going to be watching Malik Monk very closely over the next week. Because if De'Aaron Fox is traded, Malik, here are the keys. Not to the franchise, but here are the keys to running this offense. Malik is the primary ball handler. Malik is the point guard. Malik is the man now, if De'Aaron Fox is traded. And I do think Malik is capable of handling it, But can he handle it consistently? Can he handle it every single night? Can he be that guy every single night? I'm not saying Malik alone has to make up for Fox's scoring and Fox's star power. Everybody has to step up a little bit, but Malik is the one that's going to take on the majority of Fox's responsibilities. He has so far, I think, shined since going to the starting lineup. His two-man game with Domantas Sabonis is legit, and it is awesome. But can Malik Monk step up and step in for De'Aaron Fox to a level that has the Kings short-term be successful and hopefully not skip a beat, maybe even improve after trading Fox? So those are big shoes to fill, even for De'Aaron's best friend in Malik Monk. Well, guess what we get now? We get 48 hours, 2 days of no Kings basketball and nothing but more Kings drama around the trades and rumors and speculation. I'm sure that's going to be fun because after that, the Kings get the Oklahoma City Thunder. Not just the best team in the West, in my opinion, the best team in the NBA. And if they play against OKC the way they played tonight in Philly, it's going to be an ugly, rough, tough night. And if the vibes are still bad because De'Aaron Fox is still on this team or they're still struggling, they're still emotionally lethargic like we talked about, we might be in for a rough Saturday night of Sacramento Kings basketball. All right, now I want to hear from you. Your thoughts on the latest from the Fox trades, your thoughts on this game tonight in Philadelphia, everything in between. Hit me up at MattGeorgeSack on Twitter. Email me, mattgeorgesports@gmail.com. Leave your thoughts in the YouTube comment section down below. Appreciate your support as always. Can't wait to have you join me on the next episode of Locked On Kings. Until then, my name is Matt George. You've been listening to the Locked On Kings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.